I want to read you some things that I wrote in line with Kirby's. He erased that one. I was actually going to put it back up on there, but this one right here, he was talking about, they at one time called this the Merkabah. These are the 6 Sephirah of the upper tree of life in Kabbalah, which is ancient Hebrew. This is called the tree of life. And so there are 10 of the Sephirahs. And from 10 is where the concept of the 10 digits, 5 fingers on right and left, 5 toes on right and left, circumcision of the penis, circumcision of the tongue, the upper, the lower, all the Hermetic wisdom, as above, so below. All of those things, as they all say the same thing, but they're going to use different terminologies to say it, so that there's not anything new under the sun. It's all, but it all says the same thing. And so several things I want to read, I wrote, and because of where we are in this special place and time in history, and we are in a phenomenal place. I mean, I think that we are at the verge of a huge explosion, influx of spiritual knowledge and wisdom, at the change, I won't say destruction of the religious system, but at the change of it, because it is truly going through tremendous change. It has to change or die. I mean, that's just the way it is. It just has to change or die. And for a lot of it, it will die. It's sort of like that idea that, you know, you can have my gun when you pry my cold, dead fingers away from it. That's how people hold on to religion that way. They just don't want to give up on their religious ideas and concepts, and that's okay. So I wrote this early this morning. I want you to listen to this. Thinking because of, let me start at the beginning of it. For approximately 1,000 years, more or less, Kabbalah's leading thinkers, and when I say approximately 1,000 years, more or less, I am extracting this concept from a plethora of books I have read about Kabbalah that have been written anywhere from 800 to Menones, which will say Hebrew, who wrote, and a lot of the, quote, Hebrew, Jewish ideas stem from, and still to this day. But they weren't rooted in religion, they were rooted in truth, which has spiritual overtones, spiritual life in it, not religious life. And there's such a difference. Religion binds you, spirituality frees you. And so there's a lot of difference to either be bound or free. And most people get bound and don't know they're bound. Religious concepts and ideas are not necessarily something you gain by going to church. If you live in America, you are religious and don't know it. Most people haven't got a clue, and they may not even dart in a church, but still are rooted in religious concepts and ideas, not knowing it because it's a part of our conscious, the universal conscious thinking. So anyway, approximately 1,000 years more or less, Kabbalah's leading thinkers have stressed that the average person is ceaselessly at odds inside him or herself. See that? Every person, and I don't care who you are, every person goes through the struggles inside themselves of whether they're accepted, not accepted, whether they're right, whether they're wrong, whether to do this, whether to do that. Just constant struggle all the time. And you won't see that by looking at them on the outside. You say, oh my God, look at them. Their whole world's perfect. You know, just like we talk about someone else. And not knowing that inside they are going through this struggle, this at odds with each other within. So here is the statement that they say: within each one of us are all the warring nations. Now, when I say that, a religious ear can't hear that, but a spiritual ear can hear that when you read the Old Testament and you talk about the Hittites, the Canaanites, the Jebusites, the Hivites, and all of the other demonites, it's not referring to people who live over in the Middle East. It's referring to the things going on inside my physical body. Because my body is an entire universe within itself. I mean, it's just like now they're saying that we're made up of over 70 trillion cells. So you are a massive community. You're not just this one glob that you look in the mirror and say, well, that's me. Because you don't even see all you because of the vastness of you. So when you read the Old Testament, when I read the Old Testament, when I try to point people to especially the Old Testament, the ancient Hebrew, I'm trying to show them that all of the characters, all of the stories, all of the events, all of the dates and numbers are specifically talking about things inside you. Not something that literally happened, 3 or 4 or 5,000 years ago. So if I'm talking about a character of Abraham and Sarah, I'm not talking about literal people who historically lived. I'm talking about your upper brain. And we don't recognize that. That's how it was written. If all you can see is the surface level, you'll never, ever have peace. You'll always be in turmoil and war. Because that's how you read it. And that's why people get so confused. They read of an Old Testament God that all He wants to do is kill everybody. Isn't that how they interpret it? And so they get confused. Who wants to serve that God? He will kill you if you pick up sticks on Sunday and build a fire to cook fish to feed your family. I mean, that's how far off we are. So, within each one of us are all of the warring nations. See, when I read that inside me, it goes off and I say, yes, that's what it was referring to in the Old Testament when all of these battles were going on. It wasn't referring to God said, go down there and kill everything, everybody, their kids and their dogs and their pets. I mean, there's not anybody in a real rational, logical, thinking mind would serve and worship a God that's going to kill an infant because it's the wrong color of skin. That's just totally sick. But that's what religion's done for us. It's made us that sick in our thinking and prejudiced about who we think we are. So within each one of us are all of the warring nations. The Bible, as a physiological book with its stories, characters, and events, are about the physical body as the home, the house, the temple, the place of worship, actually a place of contact. Now, I was talking to someone just last night on the phone, you know, someone, significant other, whatever. And we were talking about this phrase, contact, because of contact. When you hear that word, how many of y'all seen the movie Contact? Just me and Kirby. Oh, if y'all didn't see the movie Contact, with what was it, Jodie Foster, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, I believe
I
it.
did see it.
Oh, that's a phenomenal movie. Phenomenal movie. Well, anyway, Contact is the place of connection. And we don't realize and we don't really recognize that true worship is a place where I contact my higher self. In other words, God. It's not just a place where I'm moved by a song I sang. It's to recognize that my physical body is the place of contact that this energy we call God has designed and built so they could experience this beautiful dimension called the earth. And create here what's designed to be forever, in other words, heaven on earth. So the heaven that most people want to go to is the heaven they should be living here right now. That's how God's designed it. So the Bible as a physiological book with its stories, its characters, and its events are about the physical body as the home, the house, the tabernacle, the place of worship, or the place of contact. This wisdom and ideology is basically lost to man or humans thinking because of literalist, historical Christianity. Now that sounds like I'm just really throwing a real big stone at Christianity. I am and I'm not. I'm like I'm like Alvin Boyd Kuhn in his very last work that he wrote, which he wrote in 1962 or 3 or 4, called A Rebirth for True Christianity. I put the word true, that's not in the title of his book. The title of his book is A Rebirth for Christianity. What I'm saying, if we go back and have a rebirth for the truth that was Christianity, it's a totally different thing than what we see on the face of it today from literalist, fundamentalist, historical Christianity. It's a completely different. In the truth that we would rewrite about Christianity, I guess that's why my quest is to rewrite it and to bring it to its true origin, its true source of being, is that I love everything and everybody. But you cannot say that about literalist historical Christianity, because it don't love everything and it don't love everybody. As a matter of fact, it hates the folks right down the street there. And it's built off of that. So all of the ancient wisdom schools from around the world had the same or similar stories, which were based in the astrological concept of as above, so below. In other words, we, humanity, are the mirror or the reflection of the stars, stars being the vehicles of light, which is what God is. It says that in John, 1 John, God is light. That we are the vehicles of light above. So the zodiac, or the 12 signs, or the 12 sons of Jacob, or the 12 tribes of Israel, or the 12 apostles of Jesus, or the 12 foundation stones, or are all saying the same thing. And we haven't been able to hear that because of religion and how religion has blinded our ears. So I want you to, if you have a Bible, if you will, with me, I want you to go Hebrews chapter 8. Hebrews chapter 8 in your New Testament. And you can look at this, and you might want to find Exodus, Genesis, Exodus chapter 25, and just hold your place in Exodus. We'll come back to it in just a minute. You know, as we as a person begins to open their eyes to look at the Bible as a physiological book, the characters in the Bible being the stories of my own physiology, especially my physiology and my psychology, then I realize my physiology is referring to the tree of life, and my psychology is referring to the tree of the knowledge. And so both of those trees are constantly at work in me all of the time, and should be working in a unified effort. But we have lost that concept and that idea. But we are gaining it back. We're having to go back and revisit these stories so that we can see them afresh and see them as they were told 2,000 years ago, or something like that. There were a lot of the writers over the years who wrote these stories that still said the same thing. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 1, it says, now of the things... Did the light go out?
Yeah.
Okay, I was all, wow. Something happened. Okay, verse 1 says, now of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such a high priest which is sat on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. Okay? Look at verse 5. Who serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. For see, saith he, that you make all things according to the pattern shown you in the mountain. Now, this is the instructions that God's giving to Moses. Moses, who is not necessarily a historical character, but Moses, who is a representative character, symbolic of you and me, or in other words, the whole human race, because the name Moses is the Hebrew Moshe, which actually means to be drawn up out of water with the deposit of fire in it. So go back to this, Kirby calling it the Merkabah, drawn up out of the water with the fire deposited in it. It's the same thing. It's saying the same thing. So when I'm talking about Moses, I'm talking about you, because that's the major part of the makeup of your body is water. You're 90-95% water. Some are even saying 99% water, that you are totally a water vessel, a water vehicle. And you're drawn up out of water in the formation that you have now of your physical body with the deposit of the fire, which is the Spirit of God. And I'll show you that in your own Bible. It's here in your own Bible, and especially when you see it in ancient Hebrew. So again, he said, where did he get this pattern? Now, when you're looking at, when we're looking, and when I'm looking, and when we're talking about the pattern, what we're talking about are the 12 astrological signs, which out of those signs builds the physical body. And all you have to do is look at Farmer's Almanac calendar, and you've seen me draw it on the board dozens of times. I won't take time to do it now. Aries beginning to be the head, and then Pisces, the 2 feet, the 2 fishes, the whole circle represents the whole body. And every day, the energies from that astrological wheel are building and adding to energetically your body. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you move. So that's the pattern that he's referring to. And he said, where did you get this pattern? I got it in the mountain from the heavens. From the zodiac, from the astrological wheels. And so that's basic. That should be basic foundational knowledge. Go with me back over to the book of Exodus, chapter 25. And I want to read something from here in just a minute. But I want to read something from a couple of different authors that have written on this subject. Let's see here. I guess my favorite author, Alvin Boyd Kuhn. This is Alvin Boyd Kuhn. This was a work that he did somewhere around 1948, 1949. And it's called Shadows of the Third Century by Alvin Boyd Kuhn. Again, I don't necessarily recommend you get Alvin Boyd Kuhn. He is hard to read. You have to read him with a dictionary in your hand. It's just that way. So here's a quote that Alvin Boyd Kuhn has put in his book, Shadows of the Third Century. It's a quote from John Dewey's book, The Quest for Certainty. A solution was found when symbols came into existence. The invention or the discovery of symbols is doubtless by far the greatest single event in the history of mankind. Without them, no intellectual advance is possible. With them, there is no limit set to intellectual development except inherent stupidity. Pretty strong words. And then Alvin Boyd Kuhn goes on and says this. That was a quote from John Dewey's book. Alvin Boyd Kuhn goes on and says, inherent stupidity is still and always man's most frightful danger. As a matter of fact, it tells you very clearly, in the Bible, that because of the lack of knowledge, people are in captivity, or people go into decay, or people are held in bondage. Knowledge is power. Translates to the same thing. To know, that's what Jesus said in John 8. If you know, to know the truth is to be free. To know truth is to acquire and to accumulate knowledge. So inherent stupidity is still and always man's most frightful danger. But with such a gleam of intelligence, a light in the mind of even one modern thinker, the torches of all others might be enkindled to burn with a new flood of light. Alas, it is so far from being seen and applied that one of the main contentions of this work, the assertion that the sacred scriptures are written in a language of myth and symbol, and that the Christian religion threw away the lost and very soul of their meaning when it mistranslated this language into alleged history. heavy duty. Did you hear that? He said when you know when they threw that away? In the 3rd century, 1700 years ago. And you know what they did when they threw it away? They formalized, organized a political government called the Church of Rome, or Catholicism. And most everything that you and I think as a Christian comes out of that. So, he says, alas, it is far from being seen and applied that one of the main contentions of this work, the asseveration that the sacred scriptures were written in a language of myth and symbols, and that the Christian religion threw away and lost the very soul of their meaning when it mistranslated this language into alleged history instead of reading it as spiritual allegory. With the disputed rashly, even when all the mountain of evidence is piled up before their eyes. They still don't want to admit it. They still want to argue and fuss, fight you over. Let me read you something else in the back of this book that he quotes from a couple of other authors. Gerald Massey, which I have Gerald Massey's works, but he's quoting from Gerald Massey. And let me just read you, this is a quote from one of Gerald Massey's books. It says, in another work, we have presented the demonstrable conclusion of Gerald Massey's studies that among ancient peoples, the localities, the names, the character titles of kings, heroes, and others were all taken from the original zodiacal or astrological charts of the heavens. If God has instructed Moses to make a pattern from the heavens, where do you suppose he's getting the pattern? It's the astrological wheel. It's the pattern of all of it. It's the pattern of every bit of it. So, he says, from the astrological charts of the heavens and translated to the mounts and the earthly histories and personages of national renown. History and geography were alike framed over the pattern shown in the mount and the pattern of the heavens. This universal ancient custom is the key at once to all of the mythic religions of the past and the conclusive seal of the non-historical characters of the spiritual narratives. I know that's probably a lot. Let me read you one other statement, I'll move on. Massey then specifies some 20 features of character descriptions of the gospel Christ and matches every one with identical items from Horus or Imhotep, the Egyptian Christ character. The first of these recites the fact of which all Christian minds are so oblivious. Though it stands in their own Bible that like the double-hexed Horus and other deities, the Christ of the book of Revelation, who is the Alpha and Omega of the creational allegory, is represented as a repicing female-breasted woman. And all of that, those ideas, Hercules and his 12 labors, and you can just the list just goes on and on and on, about as far back as you would ever want to go and see who these characters are and what they are about. So if you found Exodus, did y'all find that? Mm-hmm. Exodus chapter 25, verse 40. Now this is the construction of what we would call the tabernacle in the wilderness. And I know I used to do a lot of teaching on the tabernacle in the wilderness 20, 25, 30 years ago. I did a lot of teaching on the tabernacle in the wilderness. And even back then I was saying the tabernacle in the wilderness was a picture of the human body. It's a structure of the human body. And when you go into the holy place and the Holy of Holies, if you draw the tabernacle in the wilderness, let me do it this way. See if this one will right. You have 5 posts This is the outer gate, outer court, and inside this was this place like this, and this was the outer court. This is where all the masses of the people lived. This is where everybody carried on and conducted their different ideas, and it had 5 posts that you enter in. The 5 posts being the 5 physical senses: see, smell, taste, touch, hear, and or is that 5 of them? I think that's 5. All 5 of them. Anyway, that's what's represented here, and all of this outer court represents the outer structure of the physical body, which was got everything about it. The typologies that are in it, the posts that were on silver represents physicality, gold represents divinity. And so when you get into this part right here, this was all built on silver platform, this is built on gold. And you get into here, what you get into this is the inner workings of the brain and the inner workings of the womb. So that when you go into the Holy of Holies, it's like going into the womb of a woman. All of the structures, the characters, the things that are built in there describe the womb of a woman, where the birthing of creation takes place. And the only thing that can penetrate into here was the seed, which is the sperm of the male that creates the child. This whole beautiful structure, and this is what Moses is talking about, but people wanted to make this literal historical. And when you make it literal historical, you lose the very essence of what it's talking about, which is you. It's talking about me. It's talking about us. It's talking about the physical body. And he said, where did you get this pattern? God got it out of the heavens, as above, so below. The Hermetic philosophy. And so he drew the structure, and when you go in and you start to study all the intricate works of this structure, which is very intricate, very detailed, it goes into the function of the physical body, which from biological standpoint or physiological standpoint is very complicated. But not. It's complicated because we make it complicated. It's not as complicated as we think it is if we would just avail ourselves to the idea that my physical body is the place that God designed and God built for His communion with humanity here in the earth. I think they call them hot flashes.
It's an energy surge. Power. It's power.
Okay. All right. All of that is said, and I want to read you something else from this book. Too many books, too much. This is from Helen Curtis. This is a book. No, there's 2 books too. She does the 22 Hebrew glyphs in 2 different volumes. I thought that's what this was. This is a book called The Message of the Aquarian. How many of y'all know that we're in the Aquarian age? You know, the hippies made that real popular back in the 60s. This is the dawning of the age. Y'all remember that song? I mean, that was really good, you know. But it began, some say it began as far back as 1881. So they're not really sure exactly when we move into the Aquarian age, but we have moved into the Aquarian age. So we're no longer in the age of Pisces. The age of Pisces was the Christian era. It was an era of turmoil and great struggle, an era of confusion, because if you look at the 2 fishes, in the signs of the astrological wheel, the 2 fishes represent the 2 feet, which 1 foot wanting to go this way, 1 foot wanting to go this way, and aren't you in a hell of a mess when you're going like this? And that's where we've been for a couple of thousand years. And we didn't know what was going on. Pulled here, pulled. We're not there no more. It ain't the church age no more. It ain't the age of Pisces no more. It is the age of Aquarius. Like it, lump it, or whatever you like to do with it. Literally, historically, factually, that's where we are. Okay? So that's what she's writing about in this book, is we are in the Aquarian age. Here's what she says. As Israel, meaning champion or power of God, Jacob summons to his deathbed his 12 sons who are to succeed him. Now, if I talk about Israel, you think I'm talking about a nation in the Middle East. Okay? You know why? Because religion has taught you to think that way. But if I'm talking about Israel, I'm talking about your higher being. I'm talking about the astrological star light. I'm talking about the light being of who you are eternally. So if I'm using the word Israel, I'm not talking about something in the Middle East. That's very confusing to folks nowadays. Because you would not think of yourself as an Israelite, would you? It's nearly impossible for you to think of yourself as an Israelite, but you are an Israelite. You are a child of light because that's who Israel was. But yet I can say this to you and take you into your Bible. And I can say, would you read with me in your Bible about Jacob wrestling with God? And you say, oh yeah, I remember them talking about that story. Jacob wrestled with God, and God said very clearly, Jacob, no more, or you're going to be called Jacob. You know what the Jacob means? Jacob is referring to your physical body, which is a deceiver. It'll tell you one thing and mean another. I know you don't. Mine does. I'm talking about mine. Mine does that. Mine will do this and do that and gets confused, wanting to go left or wanting to go right or whatever, because it's just physical outward. It looks so good, smells so good, tastes so good. I mean, I don't know what the hell to do with it. It just pulls me both one way or the other. You see what I'm saying? That's Jacob. And in the Scripture, he's called a supplanter or a deceiver or a tricker. That's your physical body. It's always trying to trick you into something, right?
Right.
Yeah, right. Okay. Then the Israel is the light being of who you are. So now, see, I'm taking the characters out of the Bible. I'm using them as symbols and allegories and mythologies to try to show you who you really are, because you are a duality, but you're not made to be a duality that is in contradiction. You're made to be a duality that's in a divine dance. Do you understand? A dance. A dance, I like what Alan Watts says about a dance. A dance is not something that you get on a floor or a platform and you're trying to reach a certain destination. So that if you say, oh, well, we're going to dance, but when we get finished, we'll be over there in that right corner. So the best thing to do in the dance is walk over to the right corner and you have arrived. No, a dance is a journey. It's a journey of going forward and going backwards. Because at the same time in a dance that one is moving forward, the other is moving backwards. So you see, that's what the two have been designed for. The physical, Jacob, the spiritual, Israel. They've been designed by God to do this beautiful dance in the earth. And it's this dance in the earth that God begins to taste how good something is. Or begins to smell how wonderful the aroma, or to see the beauty. It's like I heard a guy say, God would never be able to see a sunset if He couldn't see it through your eyes. Because if God is spirit, don't see a sunset. Because God is it. Because God took on you and me as a place of contact so that He can experience and feel and smell and taste and see and dance with us. So, as Israel, champion or power of God, Jacob summons to his deathbed his 12 sons who are to succeed him. He blessed them and prophetically assigned to each his place and work in the age then dawning. Symbolically, the 12 sons of Jacob, the 12 disciples of Jesus, the 12 months in the cycle of a year refer to the 12 signs of the zodiac, which rule the several months, sons and disciples. At the beginning of each age, these 12 sons become the sons of the man who has prevailed and are blessed by him and sent forth. Jesus also called his 12 together, blessed them, and gave to each his work. When we attain this point in our individual ongoing, we are no longer ruled by the signs, but are able to bless them and direct and guide their forces toward a fulfillment of divine law. What is divine law? Divine law is the Trinity of the divine, i.e. God. It is light, life, and life. That is the divine law. Light, life, and love. It is from that that everything is.
The light and light.
The light comes back. Light, life, and love. This is the divine law. So, these books, you guys, let's see here. Oh, let's see. We must therefore seriously face ourselves. That's probably the most difficult one you'll ever face up to. We face somebody else, and we can always do that in deception or anger or judgment or whatever. But when we face ourselves with all of those, it's totally a different ball game, man. Oh God, look in the mirror. We must therefore seriously face ourselves and cease our opposition to the manifestation of the divine in us. Isn't that beautiful? To surrender to the divine within yourself, looking into the mirror of yourself. We must learn what our real self is and what influences come from it and what comes from the Lord's self. Think of the two great streams from the divine Father-Mother uniting in us and bringing forth in us the Son of divine light. Now, I want you to go with me to a passage in Deuteronomy. You're in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Go with me to a passage in Deuteronomy chapter 7. And I want to show you something here. I want you to see something that's in your own Bible, but it's just not brought out. It's not even talked about. But my prayer is, my seed is to be sown through the words of my mouth, that this is going to become commonplace thinking in all peoples all around the world. And that is this, Deuteronomy 7:6. It says, for you are, or King James, for thou art. Have to stay with the Queen's English.
And art was added.
So that I can show the divinity of that. For thou art a holy people unto the Lord your God. The Lord your God hath chosen you to be special unto Him above all people that are on the face of the earth. Now, that reading that literal and reading that historically, where does it put you? Outside this gate right here. And you cannot come in. Why? Because you are not special. You are not chosen, because you are not a Hebrew. You are not an Israelite. Those are lies. Those are the lies that historical, literalist Christianity has sold us. And therefore we honor a people that we've called them special servants of the Most High God, and we're not. Now in Christianity, they do have the option they added to it that you do get in through the blood of Jesus. But even with your coming in through the blood of Jesus, you still aren't a special Jew or chosen. You're still not even going to be one of the 144,000, which all have to be virgin Jews, Hebrews, Israelites, etc. And total gross error. All that is because you are the 144,000. You are the chosen, the special. You are the true Hebrew. You are the real people of the living God. And our problem has just simply been a lack of understanding the ancient Hebrew code of these words. And so when you see that, as you see that, I want to show you and point out to you a couple of things about this, about these particular words. I wanted to take the word chosen. I did put servant. Last week we worked on this word servant. That's just the spelling of it. Ayin, Beth, Dalit. And the Hebrew ayin means the eye of God. So you are the eye of God that sees the sunset. So in that makes you a servant. You are the temple. That's the word Beth, means temple, house, container, place of contact. You are the place of God's contact. And Dalit, number 4, that means that you are the door to the whole world for God. So that's what this glip means. So this is the servant. That's who you are. You're not the slave. You know what it uses? The word slave in Greek is soma. It's not the color of a skin. It doesn't mean that you're a Chinese slave or a Hispanic slave or an American slave or whatever color of whatever kind of slave you think it are. The word slave is soma. But do you know what the word for physical body is? Soma. So the physical body is actually the slave, and our problem has been our slave has been in charge of the house.
Yeah.
You got to understand that. Your physical body's been in charge of what's going on in the house. That's backwards. As I say in slang language, that's backwards. And what we need to do is reverse that and realize that my spiritual man is designed to be in charge of the house because it knows what's good for the house. The physical man don't know what's good for the house, y'all. Mine don't. Mine's planning on eating a big old piece of fried chicken.
Yeah.
God, I know it ain't good for me. But I'm going to eat it anyway. So then we come up with the chosen people. People is just the word aim. Servant, chosen people. I want you to, P-E-O-P-L-E in Hebrew is the word, it's spelled like that. We would call it am. And the A is the aim, same as here, the I, and then the M is the Hebrew final mem. This is the final mem, which is number 600, which actually means, if you can hear this, it means glorified water. Mem means water. For instance, the Hebrew word shamayim is the word for heaven. Shin mem, yod mem. That's how it's spelled. It's the waters above and the waters below. The waters above are glorified waters. That's the final mem. In other words, it's simply saying that there is an essence about you that's as glorious as God is itself, because it is God itself. And it's you. But it's so contrary for you and me to think that as God is, I am. That's so contrary for us to think, yet we constantly create our world. Nobody's created your world but you. That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to learn. We're not just trying, we are learning to create the world the way we want it to be. And in my case, for me, I am working toward creating a heaven on earth, a place of bliss and peace and love and harmony, etc., and all of the other things that I would associate paradoxically with heaven, a place of paradise. A place to live. Hallelujah. Who would not want to live there? Y'all want to come live with me in my world? Well, I will come and live with you in your world. Unless your world is the world that you're creating of hell. No thank you, I don't want to be there. So this is the word for people. So you see, when we look at these words and we begin to associate people as with a what we call a Hebrew people, not knowing that I am the Hebrew people of God. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm kind of belaboring that, I guess. But I don't necessarily mean to. I just want you and I to see and to grasp what I'm talking about. So my notes here, I wanted to give you my notes on the Hebrew, but I wanted you to see a passage with me. Let me see if I can find it. Let's see, go with me to Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2 and Ezra. Ezra, find 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, and right behind Chronicles should be Ezra, is hid right there. So if you could find Ezra chapter chapter 5. Now, I'm closing with this, okay? I'm going around and around the airport trying to find a spot to land. Sometimes because of turbulence, it takes a while. Just find these passages, because you're not going to believe this when you see it, but I want you to see it from your own Bible. And when you see it from your own Bible, I hope the lights go on. I hope the lights go on inside you. So find Ezra chapter 5, find Genesis chapter 2, and find Exodus, scared the light, Exodus chapter 3. I know that's a lot. Put your fingers in all of those places. And Ezra chapter 5, Genesis chapter 2, and Exodus chapter 3. And I'm going to start in Exodus in the middle. And I'm going to show you some things here that you haven't seen and you didn't know. Nobody ever told you this. And unless you read the Bible from the ancient Hebrew code, you won't never see it. But if you read it from the ancient Hebrew code, it's as clear as the nose on your face, like looking into a mirror. And it does kind of blow your mind. But anyway, here we go. Exodus chapter 3. And you've all heard these stories. Okay? I know you have. If you've been in church much at all, you've heard these stories. And even some of you have heard them. You don't even have to be in church. Okay, in Exodus chapter 3, verse 2, this is when Moses was having an experience on the mountain. Verse 2, it says, "And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush." Have you ever heard that? You ever heard that story?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to put this fire. Appeared unto him in the flame of fire. Notice what it says right here. Appeared unto him in a flame of fire. I was spelling another word. This is number 1. This is number 300. I won't explain them to you. Everybody see that? Everybody see that in your Bible? Now, y'all all heard that story, haven't you? And you always got confused about that story, didn't you? I know you did. Because you were saying, well, how come God didn't get burned up? If God's in the fire, or the angel, why come he didn't get burned up? Why didn't the fire get him? And yet it says he didn't even smell like smoke. Nothing at all happened to him. Right? 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 Yeah, go with me to Ezra. Turn with me real quick to Ezra. Ezra chapter 5, verse 16. Then came the same Sheshbazzar and laid the foundation of the house of God. Wow, listen to that. Foundation. What do you think of when you hear the word foundation?
Ground.
Huh? Yeah, you think of ground. Well, here's what it looks like when you spell it in Hebrew. Wow. It's spelled the same. Yeah, that's right. You just got it. Is the foundation of the temple, the tabernacle, the house of God built off the base of fire? Absolutely. It tells you that in the book of Hebrews. God is a consuming fire. What is the fire? The fire is the electrical energy that runs your whole body. The fire is the light that God is, because as God is light, you are light. You're all light vessels. You didn't realize that you were, but you still are. So we got the same word here. Fire. Moses on the top of the tabernacle. Why didn't they go ahead and say that this angel was building the foundation instead of just saying the word fire? They were saying the same thing, if you have an ear to hear it. Because the fire is the foundation, because the light is the foundation of everything that's physically manifest.
Amen.
Wow. Now go with me to Genesis chapter 2. And let's look at this again. in Genesis chapter 2, and look at verse 22, verse 23, and Adam said, "This is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." That's the word for man. This is pronounced Esh. This is pronounced Esh. And the only difference in this word for man is this one glib called the Yod, or Yud. The Yod, or the Yud, is this glib right here. It's that. It's the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet. And its number is 10. It's the first. Hebrew counts like this: 1 through 9, 10 through 90, and 100 through 900. That's how Hebrew counts. And this, and this, and this are all the same in Hebrew. This is a singularity of God itself. This is the duality of God itself in human form, and the reason it is the combination of these two glibs. This number 1 represents the male phallic, this 0 represents the female womb. And when you put the two together, male and female, you have the androgynous one manifest, i.e. called man. I mean, that's just phenomenal. And when you realize man is the foundation of the fire of God, the tabernacle, the house that God's built, therefore you cannot be anything other than the people of God. You cannot be anything less than the servant of God, and you can be nothing less than a real Hebrew. No matter where you are, your skin color, or anything else that there is about you, you can't be anything less than that. Which does mean, in the eyes of God, you are special.
And you're special too.
Wow. Did you hear that, Mark?
In my opinion.
Okay.
Oh,
Wow. Any questions? Or is it clearer?
Lord.
Getting clearer.
Clear.
Getting clearer and clearer.
Parts of it are, but then you keep adding stuff.
Just keep adding stuff. Yeah. Just keep adding. Brick on brick. Here a little, there a little. Oh my.
I'm just surprised that water's not in there somewhere when you're talking about man.
Well, it's not.
Fire.
It's fire.
It's fire. Because it's the foundation of the pattern.
And the light, yeah.
It is. It's the light. And of course now, quantum science has uncovered the very fact that you are made up of light particles. That's who we are. They've always said that. That's the Hebrew word afar, which is translated dust. That tells you in Genesis 2:7, God made you from the dust of the ground. The word ground is adamah. It's not, the word for dirt is ioretz. So if he made you from the ground, you can say the ground was the foundation of being. So that's why they would use that phrase, ground. But it's the Hebrew adamah. From the word adamah, we get the word Adam. And the word Adam is the same thing as atom.
Foundation would also be from the beginning, wouldn't it?
It's the source of your being, the origin, your origin. So, and now, because of quantum science, biologists and physicists are seeing this. As a matter of fact, I heard one of the leading biologists in the world say that he had an epiphany, and as a scientist, he did not believe in God or a higher being or a whatever, but because of his research and his study, he not only had an epiphany and was transformed, he's seen and can prove scientifically God. That's pretty awesome. Can prove it scientifically. That you did not evolve from a monkey, that you did not evolve from some kind of a quantum quirk or mistake, or just this glob getting together with this glob, and then they decide to kick out some other globs, and boom, here you are. No, they're actually proving that now, and I think that's phenomenal. So to me, all they're just proving, all they are proving for me is what this marvelous book has always said. But we never had an eye to see it. We didn't have an ear to understand it because we thought it was literal and historical. We didn't realize it was all mystery. It was the wisdom of God hid in a mystery. Hallelujah. Okay.
Would the foundation also be like in the beginning or at your birthing? So would that foundation and birthing be in the same Hebrew letters?
Yes, foundation. Oh, the word birthing?
Yeah.
The word birthing is Ba-Rashit. And it does have the sheen in it, which is fire. And so, yes, it does have that in it. It has the fire in it. It's got the Beth, the Rash, the sheen. It's got that. And that's the center of that at birthing. There's your light.
That's the sheen
Fire.
going into the bath.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. The Beth is just the temple. It's the house. It's the dwelling place. You know, what good would God do to build a house and not move in it? Or to build a house and say, well, it ain't going to serve me no good until I get it up here in heaven. I mean, that would be pretty
That is ridiculous.
ridiculous of God to do something like that. You think, as smart as he is, he would say, if I'm going to build a house and move in it, I'm going to live in my house.
Put my mansion up there in heaven somewhere for later.
Yeah.
Got Marvin.
Yeah, we got Marvin here.
Yeah.
I have a song here now. This is from Rokas. The tabernacle of God is with man. The tabernacle of God is with man. And we shall be his temple, and he shall dwell with them. Oh, the tabernacle of God is with man. I saw no temple there for man to worship in. External things were swallowed up by reality within. For knowing him is living, and all life is knowing him. Our tears are turned to laughter. There's no consciousness of sin. Oh, the tabernacle of God is with men. The tabernacle of God is with men. And we shall be his temple, and we shall walk in them. I've got it a little mixed up. There are several verses on that, but I kept on thinking of that when you were
Wow.
saying it, so. We
Rokas
are
really,
definitely-
he really wrote some marvelous songs.
Yes, he did,
Good.
and he got that in the shower.
I know,
He was so excited about it when he got that. That was one of his first songs.
I remember he sung that. Him and Carolyn just really
Yes, have a
made a
harmony.
phenomenal team, the harmony, yeah.
Yes.
And then their songs that they just really did some good songs. Okay, anybody else?
Wonderful.
Looks like it's time to eat.
Yeah. You ready?
Ready,
Through?
ready, ready.
Ready, ready.
No, I'm Lynn, I don't know who Fred is.
Oh!